So this isn't really a tutorial, it's just a quick look at curve normalization as it deals with motion paths. So what I have is I created a curve and then I duplicated it 3 times. And for the top 2, they're identical curves. The bottom 2, they're identical curves. The only difference is the U parameterization of the curve. So by default, Maya is going to do what's called 0 to number of spans. So there's 11 spans on this curve. If you look at the CVs, you can see that that's how it creates these spans, is what's between the CVs. So I have 0 to 11 because I have 11 spans on a degree 3 curve. It changes depending on your degrees, right? This curve down here is identical to that. I rebuilt it using the curve rebuild tool, but I said to keep everything the same except for do my normalization as 0 to 1. So if you go to curves, rebuild curves, and I open up the option box here, you can see I have the option here for my parameter range to do either 0 to 1, keep, or 0 spans. So if I had kept it, it would have been these guys, but 0 to 1 is going to be my resulting output here. And everything else I kept the same, basically by saying keep the CVs, it just does that. But if you look in here, you can see my parameterization of this curve is 0 to 1, even though I still have 11 spans, and this one's identical to that. So then what I did is I put a sphere and put a motion path on each of these to show the differences here. But what I did do is for this path and for this path, I turned on parametric length. And so what parametric length does is it actually uses the values direct to the parameterization of the curve. If you have that off, what it does is called normalize. So the normalized ones, this one and this one here, are going to treat this curve as a very evenly spaced 0 to 1 all the way from here to here. Whereas this one, are going to look at the CVs, and if you have CVs that are closer together or farther apart, the closer together they are, they're going to go slower. The farther apart, they're going to go faster. So watch what happens. I'm just going to click through because I like to see the frames. Actually, I'll turn on my frame count or frame number here. Not frame rate. Oh, why can't I find it? Current frame. Jeez. Well, it's tiny. It's down there. But anyway, so watch what happens with this curve or this sphere versus this sphere, and the same thing with these two. So I'm going to go here and I'll just hit the forward button. And see how these two are getting ahead while these two are staying behind? And basically that's because of the distance of the spacing of the CVs that we have here. So I'll keep going. And now everybody kind of has caught up to almost identical positions. And then these guys are now ahead. And they should all reach the end at the same time because it's just timed out that way. Or keyed, 0 here, 1 here. Or in this case, for the parametrics, 0 here, 11 here. Take a look at that there. So when you're animating this, if I go in here to my motion path, you see I have a value of 11 because it's based on the parameterization of the curve, whereas this one above it, here, I'll move this out of the way, is going to be 0 to 1 because it's normalizing. Normalize just means to put, basically in this case, 0 to 1 space. So it's going to normalize and make it a perfectly even curve. Now the only reason that that's not, it depends on what you want to do for your animation or even if in a rig or whatever, thing like that. Because the thing you want to be aware of is that because it's normalized, if you stretch and compress these curves, what do you think is going to happen? Well, if I stretch it, notice how the normalized ones are changing, right? Right now I'm at about 0.5 for these values of these two spheres here. But that's normalized from here to here. So as that curve gets longer, that middle point is going to change where it is, right? Whereas with the parameterized curves, I'll grab all 3 of them if I can, or all 4 of them, which the parameterized curves don't move because they're just looking at what's on this curve information. So they're both at 6, it looks like, yeah, and 0.5 for the lower one. So between this CV and this CV, so look at the CV right here. So the U value of this curve at this point is 0.55, right? And the U value of this one is 6.049 because it's a 0, 11 space. I don't know if I'm explaining that quite as well as I wanted to. But basically, it's the space between that creates the spans and the U value. So that's why if I move it right next to each other, it's going to move. But if I move this one, nothing's going to happen, right? But because the keys they are the way they are, it's going to quickly go down to that value because it's still just going to that value of what's on the curve. And then back to this one. So that's why as you see that these guys are now in the same exact spot, even though I've taken this other curve and yoinked it out, right? Actually, yeah, let's yoink it out like that. So watch what happens when I get to the very next span. They're going to be almost identical again. Right? And animation is just timing and spacing. So basically, in the time that this sphere takes to get from here to here, this sphere goes from there to there based on the parameterization, or the little numbers along the curve, little values along that curve that tell you where to be. All right, I hope that was helpful. This is one of those things that comes up all the time. Yeah, that's it.